Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of our I Do Work Here Lady, where people actually work at places and get mistaken for not. The stories are really entertaining, and I've got a great selection for you today. You'll hear about a woman who claims to know the boss to get free samples, a store owner who's mistaken for a thief, a racist couple getting put in their place, and an intern mistaken for a client. I hope you stay for these stories today and subscribe for future videos. This story is titled, Rude Lady Caused Her Whole Store to No Longer Get Free Tea. For some background, I work at a high-end mall, a place with outrageously priced loose-leaf tea. I met the owner of the business through my old basketball coach. She is married to an aspiring businessman who got rich because of his smart investments. Well, one of those investments was his tea shop. This will be important later. We sold a variety of the best quality loose-leaf tea from around the world. Although it was mostly just retail, we also made drinks for about $5 to $8 depending on the sizes of the cups. Part of the marketing was going to other stores and offering them free tea. Since we had a lot of leftovers from the samples we used that day, toward the end of the day, we transferred them into cups and gave them out for free to neighboring stores. This gave us more customers, and the employees were usually very grateful. Well, except for this one rude lady. We'll call her RL. She worked at one of the big stores. She strutted in one day and began to complain about how her department never got the free tea. She rambled on and on about how they always got it every Tuesday, and she didn't understand why it was so hard for us to be consistent. The conversation went like this. The rude lady said, "I know you guys always bring us tea, but we didn't get it today." I replied, "Yeah, those were just a courtesy from the owner. We give it away when we have too much for samples, and we don't want it to go to waste." She responded, "I know, so why didn't you bring us teas today? I don't understand why that's so hard to do. It's just tea." "Ma'am," I said, "these teas are actually about $12 per 2 ounces. They're not cheap, and we're not allowed to just give them out for free." She then said, "Well, I know the owner. She always gives me free teas. I want to speak to the manager. You seem like you don't know anything. We pay for these teas at the end of the month, and I don't see why you're breaking that contract." She was grasping at straws at this point. I told her, "Actually, I am the manager. I know everything that happens with the store, and we don't sign these types of contracts where people get free tea. We give out free tea as a courtesy. It's not mandatory. And from now on, I think it's in our best interest to no longer give your store free tea." The rude lady realized she'd ruined it for everyone and said, "You can't do that. I know the owner." My old coach was actually in the back at this time, since her daughter usually goes to classes and events held at Microsoft. She slid the door open and walked out to look the rude lady in the eyes. The rude lady said, finally, a grown-up, "Can you tell this kid to stop impersonating a manager and being so rude?" The owner said, "Actually, that's my store manager. You don't know me, and I've never seen you in my whole life. I think it's best for you to leave." I later had to relay what happened to my other co-workers that day, and they couldn't stop laughing. I guess me looking like a teenager doesn't make me look credible to be the manager. That was honestly one of the reasons why we stopped giving out tea for free. People got too demanding. Yikes. Another story where the person claims to know the owner to try to get their way. And I'm glad it backfired on the rude lady. "I know the store owner." "No, you don't, crazy lady. I've never seen you in my life." This story is titled, My Employee Didn't Realize That I Was the Owner. So I married her about 7 years ago. When I was about 19 years old, my 3 friends and I opened up a cell phone store. We basically repaired cell phones, sold third-party contracts, and sold accessories like screen protectors and cases. As the business grew, we wanted to expand, so about 4 years ago we opened up a second store on the other side of town. I was the one pushing the opening of the new location, so it was basically my project. Therefore, I was at the new location more often than not. After 6 to 8 months of running the new location, business finally stabilized and was standing on its own 2 feet, so I wasn't at the new location 24/7. At one point, one of my partners who ran the older store went on vacation, so we agreed that I would work at the old location a few days a week while he was gone. The other partner, who wasn't on vacation, would open up the store in the morning, stay there for a few hours with the employees, and I would arrive later in the day after opening up the other one. When I arrived, one of my partners was on the phone in the back talking to one of the wholesalers, so I left him to it and just decided to look around the store, as I hadn't been there much over the last few years. The time I did spend there was mostly 10-second visits for deliveries and such. Here's where the story begins to get good. As I'm looking around, this girl started to watch me. If I walked from one end of the store to the other, she kind of followed me, pretending that she was doing inventory or something. All I thought to myself was, okay, that's kind of weird. She was a new hire, so I never really met her before, but I assumed that she recognized me or something, since there were some pictures of me and my partners in the back. Maybe she was just nervous to meet the new boss. I was about to walk up to her and introduce myself when a customer came in, looking like he needed help. I approached him and started talking to him, but before I could react, she stopped the conversation with the customer and helped him herself. After he left, she came up to me and said, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You don't work here and you're making me very uncomfortable creeping around, so please get out of my store now." I thought, what the hell? And decided, before I told her who I was, to see what exactly she thought was going on. I asked her what she meant and she said, "I saw when you came in. I'm pretty sure you put something in your pocket." She went on to explain that she was the owner of the place and didn't want any trouble. She just wanted me to leave so there wouldn't be any issues. She was saying all of this around the time my partner got off the phone, and he overheard the end of it. I was holding back the biggest grin, and so was he. Then he approached us and explained that I was one of the owners and her boss. Her face turned red, and her whole attitude changed instantly. This all happened about 2.5 years ago, and we still joke about it. But now, this 5'4" redheaded girl, who was about to call the cops on me for just looking around my own store, is now my wife. Our first kid, who's due in 3 months, is going to hear this story for the rest of his life. What an adorable story. I own this store. No, you don't. I'm promoting you to wife. I'm glad things worked out between OP and his employee. This story is titled, "Black People Live Here and Work Here." I'm not sure about this one, but I'm giving it a shot. I worked as a leasing agent for a garden-style apartment community for about 4 months. It wasn't a great property by any means. The apartments were fine, and the amenities were pretty outdated. The point is, we would get all sorts of different people to come in and look around. One day, this young couple came in looking for an apartment. They were very sweet, pleasant, and mannerly. We viewed a few one-bedroom apartments, checked the amenities, and discussed leasing options. We were wrapping up the tour by the door that led out of the office when the young woman asked one last question. She asked, "So, are there any, black people that live here?" Lots of things immediately started flooding my brain, but in my position, there's only one correct answer. For those who don't know, leasing agents are bound by fair housing laws and cannot answer the question by saying yes or no, as it would be racially discriminatory. I replied, "Anyone who fills out an application and passes our income and background check is allowed to lease here." She became frustrated and said, "Right, I get it, but do you allow black people to live here or not?" As she was saying this, my assistant manager, who's African American and does live on the property, walked into the office by chance on her day off and overheard the young woman. She asked me if black people live here. Well, my manager just walked out, held out her hand and said, "Yes, they do." "Hi, my name is Angela." The couple immediately stammered through damage control and said, I see, It was a super awkward moment, but the icing on the cake was when, as my manager walked away, under her breath, the young woman asked me, "Your manager approves of this?" I looked at her, then at my manager, then back at the woman, and pointed to my manager and said, "She's the manager. You can ask her for yourself if she approves of herself living here." They left without saying another word. My manager and I laughed about it for weeks after. Yikes, that situation must have been super awkward for the couple. Working as an intern, got mistaken for a client and treated like a child. This is kind of a short story, but I think it's worth sharing, and it always cracks me up. My last semester of college, I did an internship as part of my special education degree. The organization I was working for was what's called a sheltered workshop. It's essentially a place for companies to send products to be processed by people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, like autism, at a reduced wage. The employees, or clients, were monitored and supported by a large staff of barely trained, non-disabled employees. I have chronic pain and fatigue, which means that I need to use a mobility aid to get around. I alternated between a rolling walker and a manual wheelchair for most of my time there. I was the only non-client with a disability. I also wore a lanyard with my badge on it, which had my name and university name in big letters. Now, sometimes my lanyard would get turned around, so the badge couldn't be seen. On many occasions I'd be doing work on my computer, or a notebook while sitting in a common area, and one of the non-disabled employees would strike up a conversation with me or with a group including me. Without fail, they would always address me with the same tone and manner they addressed the clients, while speaking perfectly normally to everyone else around. My personal favorite way of handling that was when they would pull the sugar sweet, "And who are you?" I would reply, "Oh, hi, I'm OP, the intern from the university. So nice to meet you." I'm really learning a lot from this experience. The look on their face as it dawned on them that I'm actually an articulate, college-educated person still makes me laugh to this day. It's like you could see the gears turn and the foot get shoved in their mouth. Lesson to be learned: don't treat disabled people like children. Never assume someone using a wheelchair by default is also intellectually disabled. This story is titled, "Whose Autograph?" Back in my late teens, my small town was famous for its annual early music festival. I fell in love with the music, and after one concert, I approached an organizer and said that I'd like to be involved. I asked if there were any jobs that needed doing. I had in mind something like stuffing envelopes for mailings. Their reply took me aback. They said, "You're a bright young lad. Would you like to be the treasurer?" I was too young and innocent to know the right answer to this, so instead I said, "Yeah, okay." This horrible job did have one light moment that I've treasured. Part of my job was to write checks for the agreed fees and hunt down the musicians backstage to pay them after they'd given their performances. Most of the musicians I met this way were lovely people, gentle, modest, and pleased to see me. Only one performer wound me up. She was an organist who believed she was God's gift to music and strutted around with an air of arrogance. After her concert, I had trouble finding her. Eventually, I caught sight of her in a corridor and ran after her, waving a pen and pad. She saw me, stopped, beamed, and said, "Hello, young man. Would you like my autograph?" I replied, "Not really. I rather thought you'd like mine." I flipped open my pad, which was actually a checkbook, signed her check, and handed it to her. I have never seen someone look so crestfallen when getting paid. This one's titled, "I Work Here, Just Not For You." I'm a white-collar office minion, a researcher. I work in an office behind a desk. A big company occupies most of the floor space, but I work for a little company next door, and we have a couple of other neighbors. It's pretty late in the day, close to 7 in the evening. I've left for the day but forgot something on my desk, so I double back. The place is mostly deserted. There's only one other person on the elevator, an older guy in proper office attire, lanyard, button-up shirt, tie. He gets off at the same floor and walks in front of me. When he reaches the locked security door, he twists around to stare at me. I look back. He looks at me. I assume he's some kind of senior manager at the big company. Maybe he's forgotten his door code. No big deal, it happens. So I stand there, waiting patiently. The dude doesn't say anything though, he just stares at me. Stares. After a while I awkwardly say, "Are you opening the door or can I?" He holds a pass up, punches a code in, the door beeps, and he holds the door open but is still standing in my way, looking very belligerent about it. At this point I realize what's going on. Okay, fair enough. He's being security conscious. I'm just some random person with messy hair, a polo shirt, and jeans. It's Friday, mind you. Both the big company and my own employer have casual Fridays, so he's the odd one out, not me. I say, I work here." The guy glares at me and says, "I don't recognize you." I reply, "Okay, but I do work here." I mean, I don't recognize him either, but there are dozens of people on this floor, split across the big company and the rest of us smaller outfits. He insists that he doesn't recognize me, like it's some great sin. I hold up my own security pass and point in the direction of the doors for my little company, not the big company, and say, "My office is over there." The man huffs and says, "Well, how am I supposed to know that?" I give up and squeeze past him. Well, he could have asked, or he could have considered the fact that there's more than one organization on this floor. This story's titled, "Girls Can't Read Comics." This is a short one but kind of funny, just for the absurdity of it. It's been a few years, but I still remember it quite well, as it was unforgettable for me. I recently posted a rather nasty story that happened to me, and it felt good to rant about it. This is the only other time in my life that I met a really nasty person. The guy wasn't entitled, so to speak, just really dense and sexist. It was my very first job. I was 15 and worked at a bookstore that specialized in sci-fi, fantasy, manga, and comics. This guy walks in and goes to the comic section. I let him browse for a few minutes, and then ask if he needs any help. I say, "Can I help you, sir?" The customer says, "I'm looking for," and he gives me the title and issue number of a Captain America comic from the 1940s or 1950s, I still remember. I start trying to help him, but as soon as I say a few words, he interrupts and says, "Could you get the Comics Pro?" which was the male employee who was there most of the time. "Let's call him Mike." I say, "Pardon?" "I think his name's Mike." He's not here today, but I'd be happy to help you." The customer then says, "I don't think you'd know what I was looking for. No offense, but you're a girl. Girls can't read comics. It's not meant for them." A lot of girls don't even know the difference between Marvel and DC or even what either of those are. They tend to read a lot of Twilight crap. "So, can you get someone who knows comics?" I reply, "Sorry, being a Marvel fangirl is so offensive to you, but I'm the only one here. I'll go get that comic, which is, by the way, issue number 10, not Y." I storm off, go to the back of the store, grab the comic, walk back to the front, and hand it to him. The customer says, "Don't get so angry over it." "I'll get angry if I feel like it. We're not all emotional and meant to cook and clean." I reply, "That's not what I said. If you had stopped for 5 seconds to think about what would come out of your mouth, you could give me one good logical reason why a girl can't read or like comics." He stands there, baffled, and I say, "That's what I thought. Have a nice day." The guy did come back, and he never made a sexist comment again, but he pulled the same nonsense on another female employee and got told off by her. I know my reaction was too intense, but I've gotten better over time and don't get so angry anymore. But the whole, "there are things that girls can do or should do," still pisses me off to no end. This story is titled, "The Double I Do Work Here." I go to university and work as a game master in an escape room as a side gig. It's the best job I've ever had, though it can be stressful when we're fully booked. We usually work alone, as we only have 2 rooms, and one game master can handle both at once. A week before the incident happened, I bought something to replace a part that was destroyed by one of our groups, and I paid for it with my own money. A few days later, I wasn't scheduled, but I was nearby and decided to go into the office to take my money out of the cash register and also bring the replacement part that I bought. Now, here comes the part you're here for. There are 8 people on the team. I've met 6 of them, and I'm the 7th. Usually we see each other when one shift ends and another begins. Also, we all see each other once a month for a team meeting where we discuss important things. However, I still haven't seen one of my 7 coworkers, let's call him D, and he hasn't seen me. So, I'm just walking into the office. No one's there. I guess the game master was just busy cleaning up one of the rooms. I sit down, open the cash register, and begin taking the money out. That's the moment when D steps into the office. We both look at each other, extremely confused, since we have no idea who the other one is or why they're in the office. We both could have been random dudes in the office, but I was in a much worse position, as I was an unknown person taking money out of the cash register. D says, "Who are you and what are you doing?" I respond, "Who are you?" "I'm the game master. My name isn't relevant to you." He says, "Yes it is, I'm the game master." 10-second silence. Imagine the Spider-Man meme with 2 Spider-Men looking at each other. That was us. I reply, "I'm OPD." Says, "I don't know who that is." And then I finally respond, "I think we're co-workers. I bought this particular replacement part for one of the rooms and came by to get my money back." When he realized that I knew what I was talking about, he also realized that I wasn't a robber, and he calmed down. He let me take my money and I drove off. A couple of weeks later, we met again at one of the team meetings and had a great laugh about it. However, this situation was very irritating for both of us. This story is titled, "Hey Bro, Guess Again, Not Your Bro." A bit about me first. I'm the type of guy who likes to let people make their mistakes and bask in their embarrassment when they realize their errors. I'm also a chronic malicious complier, but that's irrelevant for this story. I currently work at a school as a French teacher. Recently, I was on my way back into the school after retrieving my lunch from my car when I saw a student of mine walking down the road with a pair of his friends. The friends aren't my students and don't know me. The student sees me and waves to me. I wave back, and to my great amusement, his friend sees him waving at me, raises his hand and shouts, "Hey, bro!" It was hilarious watching my student stumble over himself, trying to get the guy to lower his hand and explain that I'm a teacher, not one of his friends. So, there you go. Not a very exciting story, but it was funny to me. Hey friends, I hope you enjoyed this episode of our I Do Work Here Lady. If you enjoyed this episode and the stories, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. See you in the next one!